Hello and welcome to Bud's RPG Review, where I give my thoughts on role-playing games, card games and board games. Today's review is God's Teeth for Delta Green, the role-playing game by Octane Publishing, Part 4. This video will cover the chapter The Long Years, 2001 to 2016. It makes the point straight away that the choices the agents made in Go Forth create aftershocks over time. The new Delta Green under the programme begins recruiting in early to mid-2000s, with all of the agents agreeing to join without knowing that their fellow conspirators have also done so. There's a possibility that they joined as a way of eventually getting to Agent Clove and those behind the event at Cornucopia House. However, the War on Terror limits Delta Green's time to do this. No one knows enough about it to make it a priority. Their names are discovered hidden away somewhere in a filing cabinet, with details of their past lost in the change to the programme. Incidents they may have participated in are not brought up. The past best left buried. The agents are part of the programme but keep their heads down, and as is usually the case, time is the healer. The first section is Agents are Home. It suggests treating this as a long gap or a special home scene in which each agent chooses 3 pursuits and that the handler should work with the players to lay out the outcomes. It is a bit different to how these scenes are usually done, as it could call for parallel narratives and large time skips. It says that everyone should share a duty to roleplay each other's bonds, which frees up the handler, which also engages more of the table to depict their personal life. They should also accept some limitations. For example, people shouldn't have their partner divorce them and cause D4 sand loss for a laugh, and that the drama of deteriorating relationships should be played out. Also, it says to move fast and give freely. Not only do they get enhanced advancement awards, but the handler should be generous with big changes in the lives of the agents. The likes of new bonds, promotion and the like should be allowed. After all, nothing a human can build cannot be brought down by bast. The section that follows this is Scenarios in the Long Years. It points out that home pursuits are not all they are presumed to have done, and that they should give their reasons as to why they rejoined the programme. As a continuing member of Delta Green, each of the agents can take the damaged veteran option if they want to. It does point out that the gap between 2001 and 2016 is a long period, such that a full campaign could be played. Once they come to the realisation that an outside force is guiding their life, and that a form of fate is in control, it conspires to throw the same group of agents at every unnatural horror you could imagine, with the powers of the teeth only escalating. It advises that the teeth do not die. Well, at least not all of them. There should be at least 2 or 3 that still live, and they should be about all those years later for red thoughts, and that some kind of miraculous event could save their life. Probability favours the agent, causing sand loss as they try to understand it. Visions of a nightmarish future could cause them to change their mind on something at the last minute, though it does stress to make survival miserable and horror-filled. It finishes this section by saying their SAN, stats, bonds and careers are all up for grabs, but their morality belongs to another. After this is a section called Special Vignettes. Each player should have a special vignette that is unique and related to their history. They're assigned based on what aspect of Go Forth they want to pursue. They can take place any time between 2001 and 2016. They are listed on this table here. The first is Following Clove. This should be the agent who Clove first made contact with, or failing that, the agent with the highest bureaucracy skill. This only happens if they find out her real identity and Go Forth and pursue her. She's not identified during Go Forth, and if they did discover her to be Dr. Noella, the agent can try to reconstruct events surrounding Cornucopia House. Using contacts within the programme, an agent with bureaucracy at 20% plus can find out that Marie Noella was at Jarmen University for almost 2 years under an exchange programme with Wilmington University. The agent needs to roll. A fail or fumble still succeeds but leaves a paper trail that the programme will question at a later date. They discovered that after her 2-year placement in China with her husband and son, Charles and Timothy, they returned to the US and Charles began divorce proceedings immediately. Marie signed her off without a fight, agreeing to split all assets and give up all visitation rights to her son without any legal counsel. Transcripts can reveal that she admits becoming distant from her husband, neglected her son and indulged in substance abuse, agreeing without explanation that the split is good for the family and is mutual. After her divorce was finalised, she was fired from Wilmington University after a year, with them declaring that she was derelict in her duties and she refused to return from Jarmen, with Jarmen University not employing her as Wilmington had paid her salary. Charles, during this time, contacted the Department of State asking for help finding her as he feared for her mental health and general safety, later rescinding the request, saying she had contact with him and told him she was safe though wouldn't say where she was. Whether she has ever returned to the US is unknown, and she has not filed tax since 2006. Charles remarried in 2009 and her son, now 19, attends the University of Colorado. Neither have heard from her in years, with contact before that being brief and superficial. Should an agent investigating Clove have access to a federal crime database, they can roll criminology. If they fail, they're locked out with a fumble flagging their access attempt. She's listed in a 2001 FBI SIOC case file in regard to the disappearance of Special Investigator Gary Hall, who consulted her numerous times while working on an organised crime task force. A strange trail of records requests by Hall were also reported days before he vanished. Hall's focus was on Italian organised crime. However, at that time he was looking into Russian mafia and ex-KGB members, more specifically Natalia Chermenenko. Noella visited Hall's office in Baltimore a short while before his disappearance, and when asked by investigators told them she hadn't been briefed on the case when he vanished. This was determined to be a lie when the sign-in at the office was cross-referenced. She fled to China weeks later, so the lead was never followed, and any warrants and subpoenas were oddly denied. The agents investigating Hall's disappearance felt like it was bureaucratic sabotage at work. The case was then listed as cold, and formal complaints filed were lost following 9/11. Hall's disappearance was marked as suicide in 2003, with an addendum of evidence referred to, though this is strangely missing. Should an investigator look into Karpov, i.e. the one with the highest skill in forensics or criminology, using fingerprints lifted from the cartoon CAF folder, then they can find out that in 2001 he is 80 years old and an American born to Russian immigrants and lives on disability pension from the Navy due to a back injury suffered in World War II. If they track him down, they can discover that he has not lived at his current address for 7 months, though his bills are up to date. If his past living arrangements are looked into, they can discover that he was the perfect tenant, keeping to himself and never joining the local immigrant communities. If his family is more closely looked into, they need to roll a HUMINT. A successful roll determines that his name is false. There was a Karpov in New York in the 1920s called Vasily, who died of flu as a child in 1921 and is unconnected to this Karpov. Should they visit the Russian community and speak to elders, their faces will go blank and they will stop talking, with a human spotting a deathly fear that most Americans could never feel. A persuade will get one of them to open up, but all I will say is that he was born in Russia, not America, and that was almost certainly not his real name. A second persuade roll will reveal that he was an NKVD officer called Berezhkov, who was a survivor of the Polish Katian Forest massacre in 1940, as he was recognised. Any agent who has top-secret access and searches the FBI or CIA files with regard to Russian immigrants can perform a bureaucracy or criminology role. Success will uncover Fedor Berezhkov, who was born in 1921 in Russia, defecting to the US in 1953 and earning a new identity and safety in 1955 by providing the CIA and FBI with valuable information. His testimony and details have been missing for a long time, though criminology role will allow an agent to make links with other sources that all dealt with the NKVD, the Great Purge, Polish massacres, Stalin's Smersh group, and Laurentiy Beria's faction after Stalin had died. Should an FBI agent dig this deep, they will be visited by Special Agent Bill Dorian for FBI Counterintelligence, a group that has connections to the CIA. He will ask them as professional courtesies to stop digging, and that Karpov is a disabled retiree and that Berezhkov died decades ago, ignoring even the most compelling evidence. If they are not FBI, Dorian gives them a much more heavy-handed visit, threatening an investigation into them and prosecution on the grounds of espionage without explicitly saying what espionage they may have committed. If they are CIA or military, an assistant deputy director or flag officer visits, offering to give them the chance to stand down before their careers and lives are ruined. The threats can be put to bed by providing prosecutable evidence that Karpov was engaged in serious crime, though that requires a law roll. In this case, the officials leave him to his fate, as this is the limit that they will go to protect him. If they decide to find Karpov in an overly enthusiastic manner, then they will come to the attention of Russian mobsters. Recent immigrants from Georgia, with a few of Russian and Ukrainian descent, they come across as flashy and filled with arrogance. Those they can't bully, they back away from and gather allies, striking from an ambush to make their point. Around 50% of them have military training, with only a few being good at surveilling people. If they're followed, they will eventually come to Karpov's house in Moscow on the Chesapeake. Within the Skopsy community, he is attended to by burly but generally stupid Skopsy, who sometimes act out their depravities on runaways and hookers. Some of their features can be attached to those partaking in the vile content of the cartoon CAF folder. Karpov is a tiny wisp of a man who coughs violently due to heavy smoking. He sometimes meets with Natalia Chermenenko. Another option is to find the scopy. This is an option to the agent who found Yelena Kalamatiano's journal, or the one with the highest power score. Understanding the cornucopia house could not exist without outside influence, if Families Without Frontiers or the Babushka's Note are looked into, a connection can be made with an unnatural cult hiding within the immigrant community here. Moscow on the Chesapeake, shown in this map here, has a traditional Russian Orthodox cathedral called the Basilica of Our Virgin Mother, which was built in the late 30s. It is a place that schools and tourists visit, as well as the local jewellers and silver and goldsmiths. The people here otherwise usually work in construction or as taxi drivers, though it is secretly the home of a particularly cruel and twisted version of the scopy. As to what the agent does with this information, it presents three options: report it to the programme, report it to the outlaws, or look into it themselves. Should they go to the programme, the results are disappointing. As a Russian cult of files that cannot have children themselves, it's a low priority. In addition to this, the agent's case officer and programme security officers will be more interested into what led them to the scopy and may reveal the events of Go Forth which they never told the programme about. This can lead to a tense situation before things go back to normal. If they instead go to the outlaws, they need to have a criminology of 50% plus and make a roll. This means they eventually make a contact that can get information to a cell. If this is the agent that was already active, they get a plus 20% bonus to this roll. A fumble means that the programme's Office of Security intercepts the message and they are grilled as if they had gone to the programme. If the information gets to the outlaws, then the agent is indirectly responsible for the 2006 operation that wipes out the scopy cult, an operation that was a complete success as all of them were killed, though casualties on both sides were immense. They will eventually find out this from their outlaw contacts, which is a 0/1 stand loss from helplessness. On a positive note, they gain a new bond equal to half the agent's charisma score, one where trust is minimal, but they are useful to each other. Though if used carelessly, the bond could end up trying to eliminate the programme liability from the record, or the programme could exploit the agent into becoming a double agent against those outlaws that won't come in from the cold. If they decide to deal with it themselves, they could use Kalamatiano's notes to pursue the scopy. If this happens before the existence of the programme, i.e. mid-2000s, then they act alone as a microcosm of Delta Green. If it is after the programme, they place it as a low priority, not authorising the action. At this point, it's up to the agents as to whether to pursue or wait. If they wait, the outlaws take the scopy out in 2006. If they go after the scopy themselves, then it should be played out, though it is beyond the scope of this campaign. It's worth bearing in mind that they occupy their own community that is part of the state of Maryland and part of Cecil County, but not part of a municipality, and as such only county sheriff's deputies and state police have jurisdiction. The police rarely have to go there. Agents that are spotted poking about by the scopy start being investigated by the cult's own gangsters, with most of them being ex-Russian soldiers and police. The scopy deal with Vasily Karpov and his Russian mafia contacts, but away from the eye of the police. The Basilica of the Holy Mother holds the worst scopy secrets, and the cult leaders summon Heidi Negratia for ceremonies and as a last defensive resort, and to take those who must be taken. It even suggests that being chased by these unnatural horrors could be used as a final confrontation with the scopy in the Basilica burning and collapsing around them. The agent that lost the most SAN, or the second most, may decide that the events of Cornucopia House need to be monitored, with this being possible using professional networks and through the programme. This way they can discover the aftermath of what happened when they left. An agent who could possibly know someone involved with the state police activity in Maryland can make a human role and a bureaucracy role if their job gives them access to federal databases. The records of where the children were placed are sealed, though the gist of what happened can be determined by what the agents did. A successful role will give them the basics of the official narrative, gaining them one SAN point. A failure leaves them dreading every knock on the door, with the only other method being to contact the people who did it with them, not that they would necessarily know how to. Whether a success or failure, the handler makes an opposed roll of 40% against whatever they rolled. If the roll beats the agent, someone noticed their curiosity. If human, the person will remember an odd information request. If bureaucracy, paper trails left behind, and will tell the programme when questioned in red thoughts. Another thing that can be attempted is tracing the signs, and can be done by the agent with the highest combined anthropology, archaeology, occult and history skills. If a tie, the player who had the most synchronicity moments in Go Forth is the one that can do it. The agent spends the next 15 years dwelling on this strange coincidences that brought them to Cornucopia House, and can use any of the 4 skills we listed to gain a clue of the handler's choice of the force occasionally known as Bast. They may try with another skill, though after 2 failures they find out nothing else. The next thing is hearing the call. The agent with the highest unnatural skill should be asked to describe a normal bedtime at home long after the event of Cornucopia House, but before the next section. After setting the scene, the agent suffers the effect of a fumble test on the call power, able to heal D6 SAN and all lost hit points before the start of Red Thoughts, though the memories and sights they see stay with them, and also with any bond that sees the fit they have. And finally, we have smelling the scent. The agent with the highest alertness should be asked to describe their participation in the programme for a year or two after go forth. Any operation is fine, though it must be related to the unnatural. Whatever they describe when they mention contact with the unnatural entity, a human connected to the unnatural entity, or a human in the proximity of unnatural science, the handler should describe in detail and then treat the scene as if the agent passed a scent power test. The smell should be described as persistent and confusing until the cause of it is destroyed. This should not happen again before Red Thoughts, and the agent will be haunted by the event, and in particular, the smell. For the rest of the campaign, the agent should be treated as if they had been exposed to the scent power. Okay, that concludes part 4 of God's Teeth. The next video in this series will be one of the add-on scenarios, God's Eye.